You don't need a bunker. Let me say it again so the bunker salesmen choke on their morning coffee. You do not need a bunker. You need 48 hours, the right building, and the physics the industry has been burying for 60 years. Radiation drops 99% in 2 days. 99%. If you know the math, you walk out. If you don't, you die with a subscription to a prepper newsletter still auto-renewing on your dead credit card. I'm Raccoon Survival. I read the files nobody reads. I cross-check the FEMA manuals with Cresson Kearny's field data and the declassified civil defense curves, and what I found is uglier than any mushroom cloud on any thumbnail. The ugliest part isn't the bomb. The ugliest part is that they've known how to keep you alive since 1961, and they let you believe you need a hole in the ground that costs more than your house. Picture it. You're in your living room, coffee in one hand, phone in the other, scrolling through somebody's opinion about somebody else's opinion. Then the lights flicker. Then your phone dies. Then the sky goes white. That flash is the easy part. The flash is over in a second. What kills you is the next 48 hours. And what kills you inside those 48 hours isn't the bomb. It's you, your panic, your instincts, your belief in everything the survival industry sold you while physics stood in the corner laughing. The survival industry lied. Not a small lie, a generational lie. They sold you the bunker because the bunker is expensive. They sold you the year's supply of freeze-dried food because the freeze-dried food has margins. They sold you the tactical vest and the night vision and the underground water cistern because every single one of those things has a price tag, and the price tag is the point. The price tag is the product. You were never the customer. You were the yield. Meanwhile, the actual science, the science that would save your life for the cost of some plywood, some duct tape, and a calculator, that science sits in a document called FEMA CPG 21A8 and a book called Nuclear War Survival Skills by Cresson Kearny, and almost nobody has read either one. Nobody makes money when you read Kearny. Nobody sells you a $40,000 shelter kit when you understand the 7-10 rule. So they buried it. They didn't classify it. They just drowned it in noise. The tactical bros with the promo codes, the YouTube preppers with the Faraday bags and the sponsored energy drinks, the Instagram influencers with the matching camo and the rented Jeep, the corporations that sell you fear by the pound and hope by the gram. They are not your allies. They are the noise that covers the signal. The signal is simple. The signal is in this video. Here's what I'm going to give you tonight. 7 steps, 1 doctrine, 1 protocol that has been tested, modeled, and validated by every serious civil defense physicist since the Kennedy administration. 7 steps that cost you almost nothing and are worth everything. The first step takes 15 minutes. The last step determines whether you die of radiation, starvation, or the thing that actually kills most people in a nuclear scenario, which I'll name at the end, and which will change how you think about the entire concept of survival. The 7th step will rewire your brain. Pay attention. But before the steps, the doctrine. The single rule that holds the entire protocol together. Because if you don't understand the doctrine, the steps are just actions, and actions without doctrine are how the herd dies. The doctrine is called the 48-hour fallout rule. It comes from a principle in radiation physics known as the 7-10 rule. Say it with me. 7, 10, 7-10. Here's what it means. Radiation intensity from fallout drops by a factor of 10 for every 7-fold increase in time. Plain words. If 1 hour after the blast the radiation in your area reads 1,000 Roentgens per hour, which would cook you in minutes, then 7 hours after the blast it drops to 100, then 49 hours after the blast it drops to 10, then roughly 343 hours after the blast, which is about 2 weeks, it drops to 1. The curve is not linear. The curve is vicious at the start and merciful at the end. The worst radiation is in the first hours. The first 2 days contain the vast majority of the lethal dose. Survive those 2 days behind mass, and you survive the war. Cresson Kearny modeled this. The Oak Ridge National Laboratory modeled this. The Swiss Civil Defense built an entire national infrastructure around this. The Soviets built a metro system around this. Every serious government on Earth knows the 710 rule, and every single bunker salesman hopes you never learn it. Because if you learn it, you realize you don't need a $500,000 hole. You need a basement, some dense material, and 48 hours of discipline. That's the doctrine. Physics doesn't take bribes. The radiation will drop whether you paid for the premium membership or not. Your job is not to outrun it. Your job is to be behind enough mass for 48 hours while it kills itself. That's the entire game. Everything else, every item, every step, every decision I'm about to lay out exists to buy you those 48 hours. If a piece of gear doesn't serve the 48-hour window, it's ballast. If a plan doesn't respect the 710 curve, it's fantasy. We don't pack gear, we pack time. Time is the only currency that matters after the flash. Now, the arsenal. 7 steps, each one a link in a chain. Break one link and the chain is scrap. Hold all 7 and you walk out on day 3 while the herd is still screaming. Step 1, the first 15 minutes. This is where 99% of the herd dies. Not from radiation, from the wrong first move. The flash goes off, your nervous system floods with cortisol, your pupils dilate, your hands shake, and every instinct in your body screams one word: run. Run to your family, run to your car, run to the highway, run outside to see what happened. That instinct is the kill switch. That instinct is how you absorb 500 Roentgens in the first 20 minutes and die coughing up your own lung lining by Thursday. The herd's mistake. They go outside to look. They get in the car. They try to drive. They call somebody. They stand in a window. They breathe through an open mouth. They waste the most valuable 15 minutes of their lives gawking at the cloud. The correct move is 3 words: distance, shielding, time. Write those 3 words on your wrist right now with a marker if you have to. Distance, shielding, time. That's the entire first 15 minutes. Distance means get as far from windows and outside walls as you can. The outside of any building is where the fallout lands. The inside core is where you live. Move toward the center. Move down if you can go down. Move to the innermost room of the innermost floor. If you're in a car, do not stay in the car. A car is a sheet metal sandwich with you as the meat. It offers almost 0 shielding. Get into a building, any building, with a concrete core. Shielding means put mass between you and the sky. The sky is where the fallout comes from. Every inch of concrete, brick, earth, or water between you and the sky cuts the radiation exposure. A single wall doesn't cut it. You want layers. You want a room with no exterior walls, no windows, under at least 1 floor of the building above you. Basements are gold. Sub-basements are platinum. Inner hallways on middle floors of large concrete buildings are silver. Time means you do not leave that spot for any reason in the first hour. You don't go check on the neighbors. You don't go get the dog from the yard. You don't go look for your phone charger. The first hour is when the radiation is highest. Every minute outside shielding in that first hour is worth 10 minutes outside shielding in hour 7. The math punishes early exposure exponentially. The science. Gamma radiation from fallout particles interacts with matter by losing energy to the atoms it passes through. Denser matter, more atoms per inch, more energy lost, less reaches you. Concrete attenuates gamma roughly by half every 2.5 inches. Earth, about 3.5. Water, about 7. Wood or drywall, almost nothing. This is called half-value thickness. It's not opinion, it's not a sales pitch. It's how photons interact with electron clouds. The universe runs on this math. The multiplier. The first 15 minutes isn't just radiation survival, it's the foundation of every other step. It's where you stop being a panicking primate and become an operator. Every second you hold that discipline, you multiply your odds. It also buys time for the most intense fallout particles to settle out of the upper atmosphere. It protects you from broken glass and pressure injuries if another blast wave hits. It keeps you from blocking emergency routes for the few professionals who might still be moving. And it sets the mental tone for the next 47 hours and 45 minutes. Discipline in minute 1 is discipline in hour 47. They are the same muscle. But shielding is only as good as the building you're in. And that's where most of the herd fails the second step before they even understand it. You think you're in a shelter. You're actually in a coffin with a view. Step 2. Shelter selection. Look around you right now, where you're sitting. Where you're watching this. That building you're in, is it going to keep you alive or is it going to kill you faster than the fallout? Most people have never asked that question. Most people assume any indoor space is shelter. That assumption is a body bag. The herd's mistake. They shelter in the wrong part of the right building, or they shelter in the wrong building entirely. A mobile home is not shelter. A wood frame house is barely shelter. An attic is the opposite of shelter. It's a radiation collector. A top-floor apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows might as well be a lawn chair in a parking lot. The herd sees walls and assumes safety. Walls are not shielding. Mass is shielding. The correct move. Select the inner core of the densest concrete or brick structure available to you. Rank buildings in your area right now before anything happens by their survival value. A multi-story, reinforced concrete office building with an interior stairwell or a central restroom core. That's gold. A brick apartment building with a sub-basement. That's gold. A modern hospital with concrete shielding designed for X-ray rooms. That's platinum, if you can get there. A parking garage with multiple concrete floors above your position. That's silver and often overlooked. Inside that building, find the spot with the most layers of mass above, below, and around you. Stairwells are often excellent because they have concrete on multiple sides and multiple floors of shielding above. Interior hallways on middle floors. Basement corners away from window wells. Laundry rooms in apartment buildings. Conference rooms without exterior walls. Walk-in freezers in commercial buildings. Those have massive insulation and often multiple floors above them. What you avoid. Upper floors of any building. The roof offers minimal shielding and fallout accumulates directly on it. Any room with an exterior wall as a primary barrier. Any room with a window. Windows are essentially zero shielding and become secondary hazards from blast pressure. Basements with daylight window wells if you're within a few feet of them. Wood frame construction. The half-value thickness of wood is almost a foot, which means a wood house barely dents gamma radiation. The science. A protection factor, or PF, is the ratio of outside radiation to inside radiation at a given location. An open field has a PF of 1. A single-story wood house center room has a PF of about 2. An inner basement corner of a standard home is PF 10. An inner basement with additional shielding can hit PF 40. A central sub-basement of a large reinforced concrete building can exceed PF 1000. That number, 1000, means if the outside radiation is 1000 roentgens per hour, you're absorbing 1 roentgen per hour. That's the difference between dead in 20 minutes and fine for a month. The multiplier. Correct shelter selection does 5 things at once. It cuts gamma exposure by 1 to 3 orders of magnitude. It blocks beta particles entirely. Those burn skin but can't penetrate walls. It stops fallout dust from reaching you at all if your air management is set up right. It provides thermal mass for temperature regulation across 2 days. And it creates a psychological anchor. A fixed point where your brain can stop screaming and start executing. Shelter isn't a passive thing. Shelter is an active multiplier for every decision that follows. But walls alone, even the right walls, are not enough. You need to stack mass. You need to turn the inside of your shelter into a physics problem you solve before the physics problem solves you. Step 3. Shielding mass. Here's the sentence that separates the informed from the dead. Walls alone are not enough. You need to stack. Most people shelter in a basement, feel safe because they're below grade, and absorb far more radiation than they needed to because they never added mass to the part of the shelter that faces the sky. The sky is the enemy. The sky is where the fallout lives. Every direction that has open sky above it, even through several floors, is a gamma highway into your body. The herd's mistake. They hide in a basement corner and think the job is done. They don't realize that gamma radiation comes down through the floors above them. A typical residential basement has maybe one wood floor and some drywall between the sheltered person and the fallout collecting on the roof. That's almost nothing. The roof collects fallout like a dinner plate collects crumbs, and those crumbs emit gamma in every direction. And gamma goes right through that wood floor almost unimpeded. The correct move. Build an expedient shielding core inside your shelter using any dense material you have. Books, canned food, bags of soil or sand, furniture filled with earth, water containers. Every inch of dense material above your body reduces the dose. The goal is to add roughly 4 inches of concrete equivalent, or about 6 inches of packed earth, or about 10 inches of books, between you and the ceiling that faces the sky. You're building a smaller shelter inside the bigger shelter, a shelter within a shelter. Kearny called this the expedient core shelter, or the lean-to shielding method. You take a sturdy table. You pile mass on top of the table, books in stacks, boxes of soil, water jugs. Then you crawl under the table to sleep. The table bears the weight. The mass above you absorbs the gamma coming through the floors. It looks absurd. It's the single most effective survival hack of the nuclear age. It was tested. It works. People who did this in simulated fallout zones absorbed less than 1/10 the dose of people who simply stood in the same basement. What you stack. Books are excellent because paper is dense and uniformly distributed. A 1-foot thickness of books above your head cuts gamma by roughly a factor of 4. Water is also excellent, nearly as good as concrete per inch. Filled 5-gallon water jugs make excellent shielding because they serve a triple purpose. Sandbags, if you have them. Buckets or garbage cans filled with dirt from outside, gathered before the blast, never during. Canned food in boxes. Bags of kitty litter. Bags of flour. Bags of rice. The science. Gamma attenuation follows an exponential curve. Each half-value layer you add cuts the dose by half. Stack 10 half-value layers of concrete equivalent, you've cut the dose by a factor of 1,024. Stack 20, you've cut it by a factor of more than 1,000,000. This is why professional shelters use multiple feet of concrete. You can't match that in a home basement, but you don't have to. You only need enough mass to drop the dose rate inside your shelter to survivable levels for 48 hours. That math is doable with household materials. That's the whole point. You're not building Cheyenne Mountain. You're building a 48-hour physics cocoon. The multiplier. Proper shielding mass does 6 things in one move. It drops your dose rate by another factor of 5 to 10 beyond the building's baseline PF. It blocks residual beta particles that might enter through ventilation. It provides structural protection if secondary blast waves hit the building. It gives you usable resources. The water jugs become drinking water. The food cans become food. The books become boredom insurance. It anchors your shelter psychologically. A physical wall around you calms the primate brain. And it makes the shelter modular. You can add more mass as you find materials without rebuilding the whole plan. but mass without air is a tomb. You can build the most beautiful shielding core in physics and still suffocate inside it. Or worse, breathe in the very fallout you worked so hard to hide from. Step 4. Air management. Here's the paradox. You need to keep fallout particles out. You also need to keep breathing. Those two requirements fight each other, and the herd loses that fight about 45 minutes in, when they either sealed the shelter so tight they're rebreathing carbon dioxide, or sealed it so loose that fallout dust is floating around their heads. The herd's mistake. They think sheltering means sealing every opening with plastic and tape, like a haunted house prop. They duct tape the doors, the vents, the windows, and then sit inside a progressively more toxic air pocket, while their own exhaled carbon dioxide builds to headache levels, then to confusion levels, then to unconsciousness levels. Or they do the opposite and leave the shelter essentially open because they're afraid of suffocation. And then every puff of contaminated air that drifts through the building settles in their lungs. The correct move. Build a one-way, filtered air system using materials you already own. You need 3 things: an intake, a filter, an exhaust path. That's it. The intake is a small opening, a cracked vent, a gap under a door into a cleaner part of the building. A purpose-made hole in an exterior wall if you have the tools. You don't want a huge opening, you want a controlled one. Filter it with dense layers, a HEPA filter if you have one, or improvise layers of a good mask material, a damp cloth, a pillowcase stuffed with more cloth. Kearny designed something called the Kearny air pump, which is essentially a hinged flap of cardboard and plastic sheeting that you hand operate to push clean air into the shelter. It's absurd. It's also been tested. It works. A single person can pump enough filtered air for 6 people to breathe comfortably. The exhaust is equally important. Air in, air out. CO2 needs somewhere to go. If you have 2 openings on opposite sides of the shelter with some distance between them, convection and the slight pressure differential from the pump will cycle the air for you. Filter the intake. Don't filter the exhaust. Gravity and thermal differentials do the rest. Around your shelter proper, seal the big gaps, but not every gap. The goal is not airtight. The goal is filtered airflow. Duct tape goes on window frames, around door edges, across vents that lead directly outside, not on the small interior gaps that let cleaner air trickle in from the center of the building. The science. Fallout particles are mostly in the size range of 10 to several hundred microns. Most settle out of the air within hours of landing on surfaces. The dangerous ones you inhale are fine dust, roughly 1 to 10 microns, which is exactly what a HEPA filter is designed to capture at 99.97% efficiency. Even a folded cotton t-shirt captures a significant fraction of those particles. Damp cloth is better, moisture traps the dust. A quality N95 mask, if you have one, captures the majority of respirable fallout dust. You don't need a gas mask. Gas masks are for chemical warfare. Fallout is particulate. A particulate filter is the correct tool. Carbon dioxide buildup is the silent killer inside shelters. Normal air is about 400 parts per million CO2. At 1,000 parts per million, you get mildly sluggish. At 5,000, headaches. At 10,000, serious impairment. At 40,000, you die. An unventilated shelter with multiple occupants can hit 5,000 parts per million in a few hours. This is why the Kearny pump exists. This is why you cannot just seal yourself into a closet and hope. The multiplier. Proper air management delivers 5 outcomes simultaneously. It keeps inhaled fallout dust below dangerous thresholds. It keeps CO2 low enough for clear thinking, and clear thinking is your actual survival tool. It maintains tolerable temperature through air exchange, especially in warm weather when a sealed shelter becomes a sauna. It reduces humidity, which matters because humid air carries more airborne particles. And it psychologically prevents the claustrophobia spiral that makes people bolt from shelters prematurely. and bolting early is the second most common way people die after ignoring the 7-10 rule entirely. But filtered air only protects the air you breathe inside. The moment you track fallout in from outside, on your clothes, on your shoes, on your skin, every filter you built becomes pointless. The contamination is already inside with you. Step 5. Decontamination. Here's the truth the herd never understands until it's too late. You are the vector. If you've been outside during or after fallout arrival, every fiber of your clothing, every inch of your exposed skin, every strand of your hair is coated in microscopic radioactive dust. You bring that dust into the shelter, you're lying in bed with it. You eat with it, you breathe it. You gave the enemy a key to your cocoon. The herd's mistake. They rush into the shelter wearing the same clothes they had on outside. They think being inside means being clean. They hug their family in contaminated jackets. They sit on the couch and transfer fallout particles to every surface they touch. They drink water with unwashed hands. 3 hours in, the inside of their shelter has the same radiation concentration as the street outside, and they can't figure out why they feel sick. The correct move. Establish a decontamination zone at the entrance to your shelter, not a metaphor, a physical zone. An entry hallway, a garage, a mudroom, a basement staircase, somewhere between the outside and the inner shelter where contamination stops and clean space begins. Mark it mentally as the line. Procedure. You arrive at the decontamination zone. Before entering the clean space, you remove every piece of outer clothing: jacket, pants, shirt, socks, shoes, hat. You remove them slowly, inside out where possible, rolling them into a tight bundle. You do not shake them. Shaking releases the dust back into the air. You place them in a plastic bag and seal it. You set that bag in a corner of the decontamination zone, and you do not touch it again for days. Then you wash. If you have running water, rare after a nuclear event, but possible in the first hours, a full shower with soap removes roughly 90% of surface contamination. If you don't have running water, you use damp cloths. You wipe your face, your hands, your arms, your neck, your hair, working outward from the center of your body. You use each cloth once and discard it into the contaminated bag. You rinse if you can. You do not reuse wipes. Hair is critical. Hair traps particles the way a broom traps dust. If you can, wet it thoroughly and work soap through it. If water is rationed, cover your hair with a clean cloth or cut it short before sheltering begins if you have time. Then, and only then, you put on clean clothes you staged inside the shelter before the event. Pre-staged clean clothing is one of the cheapest, most powerful preps in the entire protocol. A single, sealed plastic bag of clean clothes in your basement is worth more than a $1,000 tactical vest. The science. Surface decontamination of clothing through removal eliminates roughly 95% of external particle contamination. Soap and water skin washing removes another 90% of what's on the skin directly. The remaining contamination is biologically manageable for healthy adults over a 48-hour window. The goal is not zero contamination. The goal is dropping the internal shelter contamination level by enough orders of magnitude that your filtered air and shielding mass can do their jobs. Every pound of contaminated clothing you keep out of the inner shelter is dose you don't absorb across 48 hours. Iodine is separate. Potassium iodide tablets block the thyroid from absorbing radioactive iodine 131, which is a major component of fresh fallout. One dose of potassium iodide taken within a few hours of exposure saturates the thyroid with safe iodine and prevents the radioactive version from binding. This is not a magic pill for overall radiation. It only protects the thyroid. But thyroid cancer was the dominant long-term killer of Chernobyl survivors, and potassium iodide costs almost nothing and stores forever. There is no reason not to have it. The multiplier. Decontamination protocol delivers 4 compounding effects. It preserves the integrity of every other shelter system you built. It protects you from internal contamination via ingestion and inhalation of re-aerosolized dust. It protects everyone else in your shelter. Decontamination is a collective defense protocol, not a personal one, and it rewires your mindset from passive hider to active operator. You are now running procedures, not just surviving. But inside the shelter, even perfectly cleaned and perfectly shielded, you still face the real enemy of the 48-hour window. The enemy isn't radiation anymore. The enemy is your own head. Step 6. The 48-hour lockdown. You've done everything right. You're in the inner core of a concrete building. You have 4 inches of shielding mass above you. Your air is filtered. You're clean. Your clothes are clean. Now you have to sit there for 48 hours with the people you love, in the dark, with no phone, with no news, with no certainty that anyone outside is still alive. And that, right there, is where more people die in nuclear scenarios than from the actual radiation. The herd's mistake. They break lockdown. They get anxious. They get bored. They get hungry. They get one unbearable message from the intrusive thought in their head that says, maybe it's over. Maybe the news was exaggerated. Maybe the neighbors went outside and they're fine. And they open the door. They step out. They check. They absorb a dose at hour 15 that kills them by day 10. Or they fight with their shelter partners until the social fabric tears and someone storms out. Or they spiral into panic so hard they can't eat, can't sleep, can't think, and they hit hour 24 so mentally broken that every decision after is wrong. The correct move. Run the lockdown like a submarine. Submarines figured this out 100 years ago. You impose structure, you impose rotation, you impose rationing, you impose silence hours and activity hours. You treat time as the enemy to be beaten, not the punishment to be endured. Water. Roughly 1 liter per person per day, minimum. 2 is better. Pre-staged in the shelter. Not tap water you hope to draw after the event. Pre-staged. You ration it in measured pours, not free access. You drink on a schedule. Food. You don't need much. 2 days is short. A few calorie-dense items, nut butters, crackers, energy bars, canned meat, dried fruit. Roughly 1,000 calories per person per day is enough to keep function for 2 days without any risk of serious decline. Food is secondary to water by an enormous margin. Waste. You need a sealable container with a lid. A bucket with a plastic bag liner and a second lid works. Pine-scented kitty litter absorbs odor and moisture. You do not leave the shelter to use a bathroom. You do not. You manage waste inside the shelter with a lined bucket and you seal it after each use and you let the system work for 48 hours. This is not glamorous. This is survival. Sanity. The mental maintenance is as important as the physical. Rotate duties. 1 person on air pump, 1 person on watch, 1 person resting. Rotate every 2 hours. Talk. Tell stories. Play games that don't require electricity. Whisper quiet because sound echoes in an enclosed space and wears nerves down faster than silence does. Sleep on schedules, not on whim. Use a watch or a wind-up clock if you have one. Your sense of time evaporates in a windowless shelter within hours, and disorientation compounds into panic. Light. Minimal. 1 small LED lantern. Battery-powered, not flame. Flame in an enclosed shelter consumes oxygen and produces CO2 and is a fire hazard. LED on the dimmest setting preserves batteries across 48 hours easily. Radio. If you have a battery or crank radio, tune it to emergency frequencies for information, but do it on a schedule, 15 minutes every 3 hours, to preserve batteries and preserve your mental state. Continuous radio listening is continuous anxiety. You want information, not immersion. The science. Human psychology under confinement follows predictable degradation curves. Isolation studies from submarine duty, Antarctic research stations, and spaceflight all converge on the same finding. Structure beats chaos. Rotation beats endurance. Schedule beats willpower. The brain tolerates long confinement much better when it has predictable rhythms to anchor to. Removing predictability is how confinement becomes torture. Adding predictability is how confinement becomes a job. The multiplier. A disciplined 48-hour lockdown delivers 5 compounding benefits. It lets the radiation do its natural decay without interference. It preserves group cohesion. The people you emerge with are the people who will help you rebuild. It preserves your own decision-making capacity for the critical exit moment. It conserves every other resource, water, food, batteries, filters, at sustainable rates. And it transforms the experience from trauma into training. People who run a disciplined 48-hour lockdown report afterward that they feel not weaker, but stronger. The herd emerges broken. Operators emerge sharpened. But 48 hours isn't the end. 48 hours is just when you're cleared to start thinking about the world again. And the world you step into on hour 49 is not the world you left. Exit is its own protocol, and getting it wrong undoes every hour of discipline that came before. Step 7. The exit strategy. This is the step the tactical bros skip entirely. This is the step that separates people who survive the bomb from people who survive what comes after. Every video you've watched about nuclear survival spent 90% of the time on the first 15 minutes and 0% of the time on the one question that actually determines your long-term life. When do you leave and where do you go? The herd's mistake. They assume exit is a single decision made at hour 49. Door opens, they walk out. They go home, they go to work, they go find food. Exit for the herd is a binary flip, sheltered to unsheltered, with no gradient, no assessment, no downstream plan. And because of that binary flip, they walk into contamination patterns they didn't know existed, eat food that absorbed fallout, drink water that collected radioactive particles, and absorb over the next 30 days the dose they just spent 48 hours avoiding. The correct move. Exit is a protocol, not a moment. It has phases. It has decision points. It has a wind check, a surface check, a route check, and a destination check, in that order. Wind check first. Fallout is distributed by wind. The most contaminated corridor is downwind of the blast. The cleanest corridor is upwind or crosswind. If you have a radio or any intact outside information, identify the blast location and the prevailing wind directions since the event. You will move perpendicular to the wind or upwind from fallout sources. You will not move downwind. Downwind is the kill corridor. The herd moves downwind because downwind is usually where roads go. Roads are not your friend after a nuclear event. Surface check second. Before you open the shelter, check what you can. Listen. Is there wind? Rain? Rain is actually your friend. Rain washes fallout into the ground and reduces airborne contamination dramatically. Sunlight after rain means the surface has been partially decontaminated by nature. Dust and dry conditions mean surface fallout is still mobile and still dangerous. A simple visual through a window you've kept sealed and not approached during lockdown, can tell you a lot. Avoid areas where you can see gray or white dust accumulated on surfaces. That's fallout. Walk around it. Route check third. Before you commit to moving, plan the path. Avoid open fields. They've been catching fallout for 2 days. Move along the side of buildings. Use covered walkways, underpasses, parking structures, subway tunnels if available and stable. Every step under cover is less dose. Every step in the open is more dose. Your goal is not speed. Your goal is minimum cumulative exposure between shelter A and shelter B. Destination check fourth. Where are you going and why? Home, if home is survivable and better than your current shelter, is a reasonable goal. Home, if home is a wood frame house downwind of a blast, is a death sentence disguised as nostalgia. Better shelter, if a better shelter exists within reachable distance, is a reasonable goal. A rally point with other survivors is reasonable if the rally point was established before the event and is upwind. Wandering to see what happened is not a destination. Wandering to find food in a contaminated zone is not a destination. Every exit movement should be purposeful and short. The science. External fallout exposure outside shelter continues to decay along the 710 curve. At hour 49, exposure is 1/10 of the hour 7 level. At day 14, it's 100th. But surface contamination persists. Food and water in the contaminated zone can carry radioactive isotopes for weeks to months, depending on the isotope. Cesium-137, strontium-90, and iodine-131 have very different half-lives and different biological behaviors. This is why the exit strategy continues for weeks, not hours. You are not done when you walk out of the shelter. You are promoted to a new phase with new rules. Short movements, covered routes, upwind direction, filtered air mask during any outside movement, sealed water and pre-stored food only, nothing gathered from the contaminated zone in the first 30 days. Bathe and re-decontaminate after every outside excursion. Monitor a radio or any information source for updates on contamination zones, emergency services, and rally points. The multiplier. A disciplined exit protocol delivers 6 compounding outcomes. It preserves all the dose reduction you banked during the 48-hour lockdown. It prevents recontamination of your shelter, which you may need again. It integrates you into whatever emergency response structure is functioning, and some structure usually is, even if it's imperfect. It positions you to help others rather than become a casualty statistic. It extends your survival window from 48 hours to the 2 to 4 week window when the real cleanup and reorganization begins. And it completes the transition from recruit to operator. You entered the shelter as someone who knew physics, and you leave it as someone who has operated under physics. So, 7 steps. First 15 minutes, shelter selection, shielding mass, air management, decontamination, the lockdown, the exit. Each one a link in a chain, each one tested, modeled, validated. Each one achievable with materials you already own or can acquire for the cost of a cheap meal. Now the synergy. Because these 7 steps aren't 7 separate tips, they're one system, a physics cocoon. And the cocoon only works if every layer holds. The building gives you the gross protection factor. The shielding mass gives you the multiplier on top of that. The air management keeps the interior livable across the full window. The decontamination keeps the cocoon from being betrayed by your own body. The lockdown discipline gives time its chance to do what physics dictates. And the exit protocol preserves everything you banked and extends your window from 2 days into the long game. Break one link and the rest becomes theater. Build a perfect shelter and ignore air management, you pass out from CO2. Filter your air but skip decontamination, your clothes shed fallout into the filtered air. Run a disciplined lockdown but blow the exit. You absorb in 1 hour what you avoided for 2 days. The chain is the protocol. The protocol is the chain. And the cost of this chain, start to finish, is almost nothing. Some duct tape, some plastic sheeting, a few buckets, a cheap N95 mask per person, a roll of garbage bags, a sealed bag of clean clothes, a battery radio, a bottle of potassium iodide, a couple of flats of bottled water, a handful of calorie-dense snacks, a dimmable LED lantern and spare batteries, maybe $300 for a family of 4. The bunker salesmen want $500,000. The physics wants $300. The physics is right. Now the dark truth. Because without it, this is just another sales pitch. The dark truth is that the protocol won't save everyone. It won't save you if you're within the thermal radius of a large warhead. At that distance, protocol is irrelevant. It won't save you if your building collapses from the blast wave. It won't save you from the slow grind of a collapsed civilization over the following months if you don't have a longer-term plan. The 48-hour protocol gets you through the acute crisis. It does not guarantee you a comfortable life on the other side. And the darker truth underneath that one, the one nobody wants to say out loud? Radiation is not the main killer in post-nuclear scenarios. Panic is. The research from Hiroshima, the analysis of Chernobyl, the studies from Fukushima all show the same pattern. More people die from the behavior of the crowd than from the physics of the event. Stampedes, heart attacks from stress, violence over resources, suicides, preventable injuries during uncontrolled evacuation. The crowd kills itself trying to escape something it didn't understand. The physics was survivable. The stampede wasn't. Which means the real weapon isn't the bomb. The real weapon is what the crowd becomes in the 48 hours after the bomb. And the real protocol isn't about hiding from radiation. It's about not becoming part of that crowd. It's about holding discipline while the species around you goes feral. It's about being the 1% who breathes slow while the 99% runs screaming. That's hard. That's harder than any piece of gear, and nobody sells a subscription for it. So here's your choice. Right now. Not later, right now. Option 1. You close this video. You tell yourself it was interesting. You go back to scrolling. You don't stage the clean clothes. You don't buy the potassium iodide. You don't walk the building you work in and identify the inner core. You don't tell your family what the 7-10 rule is. And if the flash comes, you run. You run the wrong direction for the wrong reason at the wrong time. You become a statistic in a report nobody will ever write. You die with a tactical vest in your closet that you never practiced wearing. Option 2. You pause this video, you get a notebook, you write down the 7 steps. You open a browser tab and you order potassium iodide tonight. $15. You order N95 masks for every member of your household. $30. You find the 3 most shielded buildings within walking distance of every place you regularly are. Home, work, school. You identify the inner core of each. You walk it. You know it. You pre-stage clean clothes and a few liters of water in your home's inner core. You tell the people you love. You run the protocol in your head until it's automatic. That's it. That's the choice. Comfort now and a dead man's sprint if the sky goes white. Or 15 minutes of annoyance tonight and a 48-hour cocoon that reduces your mortality by more than 99% if the day ever comes. The physics doesn't care which option you pick. The physics will run the 7-10 curve whether you bought into it or not. The question is only whether you're on the curve's good side or its bad side when the clock starts. Make your choice. The bunker salesman won't survive this briefing. Neither will the tactical bros. Neither will the subscribers to the glossy newsletter. The people who will walk out on hour 49 are the ones who understood that the most powerful survival tool ever built wasn't sold. It was published. It was ignored. And it was waiting in a government manual since before your parents were born for anyone willing to read it. That's you. If you made it to this sentence, you're already not the herd. The herd closed the tab at minute 3. The herd wanted entertainment. You wanted the signal. You got it. Now use it. Physics doesn't take bribes. Follow the math. Stay sharp. Stay ready. Class dismissed.